Welcome to Simply Explained English. I am Lisa.
And I'm Eric. Do you want to improve your English easily? If so, you're in the right place.
So, let's get started and make English learning easy. So, Eric, what's on our list for today?
The first word today is relevant. Then we will continue with handy and make ends meet. Then turn down. And the final one is the last straw.
Okay, let's start with the first word.
The first word today is relevant.
Relevant.
Relevant. Relevant is an adjective. It means connected to the subject you are talking or thinking about. When something is relevant, it is important or closely related to the topic.
For example, if you're discussing a historical topic, information about ancient Rome would be relevant. However, a fact about cooking might not be relevant. Now, let's give 2 example sentences to help everyone understand it better. Could you give us an example sentence, Eric?
Sure, Lisa. Here's my example. The teacher asked for relevant questions about the lesson. It means that the teacher wants questions that are connected to the lesson, not about something different.
Good example, Eric. Now, my turn. When writing an essay, it is important to write relevant information. This means that when you write an essay, you should only add information that is related to the topic. Irrelevant information, which is the opposite of relevant, is not needed.
That's right. And here's a quick note. When using relevant, we often follow it with to. For example, relevant to the topic or relevant to our discussion. This shows what it is connected to.
That's helpful, Eric. Now, let's give an example dialogue to show relevant in conversation.
Mike, do you think this chapter is relevant to our exam?
Yes, it is very relevant. The teacher said most questions will be from this chapter.
Okay, then we should focus on the most relevant parts first.
I agree. Let's start with the main topics.
That was a nice example, Eric. I like how they talked about relevant when studying for an exam.
Yes, Lisa. Relevant is a great word when we want to talk about things that are important or connected to what we are talking about. Now, let's discuss why relevant is a useful word. Lisa, what do you think?
I think relevant is very useful because it helps us communicate clearly. We often need to know what is important or connected to a topic. This word helps us to say that directly.
Absolutely. And relevant is a word that is used in both formal and informal settings. You can hear it in schools, offices, and even in everyday conversations.
Yes, I agree. It's very common and easy to use. Well, that's all for today's word, relevant. We hope our listeners found it helpful and easy to understand. Let's move on to our next word, Eric.
The second word we are going to explain is handy.
Handy.
Handy. The word handy is an adjective. It means something that is useful or easy to use. If something is handy, it can help you in a situation or it is convenient to have.
Exactly, Eric. Handy is often used to describe tools, objects, or even people who are skillful with their hands. Now, let's give 2 example sentences to help everyone understand better.
Sure. Here's my example. This small knife is very handy for camping. It means that the knife is very useful when you go camping. You can use it for many things while camping.
Great example, Eric. Now, my turn. It's always handy to have a pen in your bag. It means that having a pen in your bag is very useful. You might need to write something down, and a pen can help you.
Good one, Lisa. Now, let's move on to a short dialogue to show handy in a conversation.
Mike, do you have a bottle opener? I can't open this bottle.
Sure. Here you go. This small one is really handy. I carry it on my keychain.
Wow, that is handy. Do you always have it with you?
Yes, it's perfect for situations like this.
That was a good example. It shows how a small thing can be very handy in everyday life. So, Eric, what would you say about the word handy?
Well, Lisa, I think handy is a good word because it can describe so many things: tools, objects, or even people who are good at fixing things. It's a word we use often in daily life.
I agree. Handy is also a friendly and informal word. You can use it in conversations with friends, family, or coworkers.
Yes, that's a good point. It's an easy word to use and it makes your English sound more natural. So I encourage our listeners to learn handy.
I agree. All right, I think we have explained handy fairly enough. We hope you find this word, well, handy. Okay, let's continue with the next word, Eric.
The next word is make ends meet.
Make ends meet.
Make ends meet. Make ends meet is an idiom that means to have just enough money to pay for the main things you need, like food, rent, or bills.
When someone says they are trying to make ends meet, it usually means they don't have a lot of money and are finding it difficult to pay for everything. Eric, could you give us an example sentence?
Sure, here's my example. Jane works 2 jobs to make ends meet. It means that Jane has to work 2 jobs to earn enough money for her daily expenses.
Great example, Eric. Now, my turn. Even with careful planning, it's hard to make ends meet on a small salary. It means that even if you are careful with money, it is still difficult to pay for everything when you don't earn much.
Good example, Lisa. Now, let's move to a short dialogue to show how to use make ends meet in a conversation.
How are you doing, Mark? You look tired.
Oh, I'm okay. Just working extra to make ends meet.
I understand. It's tough these days. I'm also looking for a part-time job to help make ends meet.
Yes, every bit helps. Hopefully, things will get better soon.
That was a useful but sad example.
Yes, it is. It shows that making ends meet might be difficult sometimes.
I agree. Okay, what would you say about the idiom, Eric?
Well, it's a very common phrase, especially when times are tough. I think make ends meet is a useful phrase because it describes a situation many people experience. It's a practical and useful idiom when talking about financial difficulties.
I completely agree. And make ends meet is quite common in both everyday conversations and news stories. It's an important phrase to know if you want to understand English better.
Absolutely, Lisa. It's always good to know phrases like this, especially if you want to connect with others and talk about real-life situations.
I agree, Eric. So, listeners, you can use make ends meet when you want to talk about managing your budget.
Great advice, Lisa. And that's it for the word make ends meet.
Okay, Eric, shall we move on to the next word?
Let's do that. The next word is turn down.
Turn down.
Turn down. Turn down is a phrasal verb that has 2 common meanings. The first meaning is to reject or refuse something, like a job offer or an invitation. The second meaning is to reduce the level of something, like the volume on a radio or the heat on a stove.
So, if you turn down an offer, you mean no to it. And if you turn down the volume, you make it quieter. Let's give some examples. Eric, could you go first?
Sure, here's the first example. She turned down the job offer because it was too far from home. It means that she refused or rejected the job offer because the location was not close to her home.
Right. Here's another example. He asked her to go to the movies, but she turned him down because she had other plans. It means that she refused his invitation to the movies because she already had something else to do.
Good examples. Now, a quick note on grammar. Turn down is a separable phrasal verb. This means you can separate it with a pronoun. For example, turn it down or turn the offer down. Now, let's hear a short dialogue using turn down in both of its meanings.
I heard you got a job offer from that big company. Did you accept it?
No, I turned it down. The salary was good, but the hours were too long.
I see. Sometimes it's better to turn down a job that doesn't fit your lifestyle. By the way, could you turn down the air conditioner? It's getting a bit cold in here.
Sure, no problem.
That dialogue shows how turn down can be used to both reject an offer and make the level of something lower, like the air conditioner.
Yes, and it's a very handy phrase. Lisa, do you think turn down is a common phrase in English?
It's used a lot in everyday conversations because we often need to talk about refusing something or lowering the volume. It's a very practical phrase to know.
I agree, and because it has two different meanings, it's useful in many different situations. You can use it in both formal and informal settings, depending on the context.
Yes, so just remember, if you want to refuse something, you can turn it down. And if you want to lower something like sound or heat, you can also turn it down.
Exactly. Well, that's all for the word turn down.
Yes, and now it's time to explain the last word of today. What is the last word today, Eric?
The last word today is the last straw.
The last straw.
The last straw. The last straw is an idiom, and it means that it is the final problem that caused them to lose patience or decide to take action. When someone says, "This is the last straw," it means that they can't take it anymore.
Exactly, Eric. So, the last straw is the last thing that makes a person feel enough is enough.
That's a good explanation, Lisa. Now, let's give 2 example sentences to help everyone understand it better. Here's my example. When he shouted at me for no reason, it was the last straw. I quit my job. It means that the person had been already unhappy for a while, but the shouting was the final problem that made them decide to leave their job.
Here's another example. When the car broke down again, it was the last straw for him, and he decided to buy a new one. It means that after many problems with the car, the latest breakdown was the final issue that made him decide to get a new car.
Good one, Lisa. Now, let's give a short dialogue to show how the last straw can be used in conversation.
I've been trying to be patient, but when she left the kitchen a mess again, it was the last straw.
I can't blame you. If that happened to me, it would be the last straw too. What are you going to do?
I'm going to ask her to move out. I just can't take it anymore.
That was a good example, Eric. It shows how the last straw is used when someone can't take any more problems. Do you think it is a common idiom, Eric?
Yes, Lisa, it's a very common idiom when people are frustrated or upset, and in both spoken and written English. What do you think?
Well, Eric, I think the last straw is useful because it helps express strong emotions. When someone is really fed up or has had enough, this phrase explains that feeling perfectly. Also, it is easy to remember because you can imagine a camel carrying a lot of straws, until one last straw makes it too heavy.
That's a good way to think about it, Lisa. So, listeners, the last straw is the final problem that causes you to take action.
Well, I think we have reached the end of our podcast today. Thanks for listening to Simply Explained English. We hope you found today's words helpful.
See you in the next episode with more simple English explanations.
Bye for now.